this episode of the bonus round, we turn the spotlight back on ourselves as we take a look at the media. We're joined by Michael Pachter, Jessica Chobot, and Kyle Bossman to talk about the role of media in this ever-changing landscape.
Where you get people being bought off is the subtle influences, like the junket.
You don't want to miss this episode of the bonus round, starting right now. Hey, welcome back to the bonus round here on GT. I'm Jeff Keighley with Michael Pachter, Jessica Chobot, and Kyle Bossman. And we are talking about the state of the gaming industry and the perspective of gamers on the industry. Last week we talked about sort of some of the issues gamers have had with the publishers. Now let's move on to something that I think I certainly feel a lot inside of GameTrailers as well, and Spike, is the gamers' frustration with the media, the established media, the idea that, in this day and age, the media is all bought off by the publishers and not really reflective of how gamers feel. I think we even felt a little bit of this during the DRM scandal with Microsoft, where, a lot of the media don't necessarily trade in games all the time because we get free copies of games, so some of them didn't understand, how important used games were to gamers to sort of fund their hobby. Kyle, let me start with you on this one. Do you understand where the gamers are coming from? Because I feel that there's a increasing level of frustration amongst gamers that somehow they can't trust the media.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. It's the whole, we can't do GameTrailers.com without publishers. Right. And so we have to it's weird how nice you have to be to a publisher. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And there's that whole balance that is hard to figure out for both us and regular people watching it and publishers. It's we can't just let them trash our game. It's a whole mess.
No, there's an element of certainly access that we all need to publishers and their games and things like that. So you have to have a relationship with those publishers. But at some point, obviously, that crosses over to where it's how. There's the reviews and things like that, and I think, I'm not sure people feel that the reviews are off for games. I feel like most reviews of games, by and large, are sort of generally, similar to what consumers think. I haven't seen some game that, got incredible reviews and gamers think was terrible. But there is this general sense, and you feel this a little bit too, Michael, where it's sort of you're the analyst is sort of, you're not representing the gamer. It's you're bought off by the publishers because it's you think about the business side of the story.
Yeah, I'm definitely not representing the gamer. I could care less about the gamer.
Right.
And I'm definitely not bought off by the publishers, but
right.
I am owned by the investors and the publishers. And the cool thing about being owned by the investors is that people can make money by buying stocks, they can make money by selling stocks, and they can short them. So I don't care if a publisher's stock goes up or down. Right. I care that my clients make money. And so I'm not rooting for any publisher to do well or to do poorly. I'm just telling people what I think is going to happen. So the idea that I could be bought off by a publisher is idiotic, and I've had publishers who blacklisted me and refused to speak to me because I had sell ratings on them, and I've had publishers who kiss up to me because I do something that they think is nice, and every time I talk to them, it's just happened. I just did a CNBC segment on GameStop.
Right.
And I got into an argument with one of the hosts because he was convinced GameStop's a big short, and the GameStop CEO sent me an email. Thank you, that was so nice. And I said, yeah, until your stock hits my price target, then I'm not going to like it anymore.
Right.
And that's the truth. So no.
The power of Pachter.
But I'm not a member of the media.
Right.
I'm quoted by the media because I'm perceived to be an expert about these stocks. And I am an expert about stocks.
No, that's a good point. You are, financially honest, you're beholden to your customers,
constituents.
Exactly.
Right?
And so the question is, I think, for the media, it's are our customers the gamer, and it's we should be servicing the gamer then in some ways.
I think that's well, your customers are the gamer because they provide the views, the page views, and the hits on the website, but your true customers are your advertisers. So that's what Kyle was talking about, that the dilemma, the conflict you have between driving traffic to the site or to wherever you write, to circulation, and satisfying the people who pay the bills. And that is a fine line, I think.
No, and that's why it's always, I think, a challenge, because especially in the gaming industry for so long, we've had the publishers.
That's why you bring me on, because I can say something bad and you don't have to agree.
No, but I think part of it's and absolutely, because in many ways, in the past, it's been the publishers have been, sort of advertising. You flip through any gaming magazine in the past, it would mostly be ads for games. And one of the things is then when you get non-endemic, what we call non-endemic advertisers involved, which are, the soft drinks and the fast food vendors and the cars and things like that, more of that advertising will actually lessen the gaming media's reliance on the publishers, but then gamers often, as I saw last year, they will freak out about anything kind of non-endemic tied to gaming, because it's sort of like, oh, well, that's corrupt, you're selling junk food, you should be talking about games. So it's sort of like it's this dichotomy that sort of exists now.
I still don't get the Burger King thing with you. I don't even know what you did, but it cracks me up every time I read about it. Wasn't it Burger King?
Close.
Oh, shoot.
Not fast food. Doritos, Mountain Dew.
Doritos, that was okay. There you
but
go.
It's like, but that was a great example of something where it was sort of, a non-endemic advertising. People immediately thought it was somehow tied to a publisher, but it wasn't. It had nothing to do with, they happened to be promoting Halo the year before they did Call of Duty, but gamers sort of instantly react to that, saying, hey, this is corruption amongst the media, when in many ways that's, the more non-endemic advertisers that come to a website, the less reliance you have on the publishers to fund these sites. And I think that's something, Jessica, I'm sure you've seen over the years at IGN and things like that too, where it's like there's this tension that exists.
There is, and I am the biggest target for this too. I don't think people, I'm in an interesting position where I'm not a reviewer.
Right.
I don't review games. At IGN, I very rarely got free games. I actually buy most of my games. Yeah. And I consider myself a host. I'm an entertainer. Right. I'm happy to tell you the information that's out there, but, and I've got my own personal opinions on it. But I'm not going to affect the review score or the coverage that the site might give the game. Right. It's never going to happen. But unfortunately, nobody really understands the fact that you can be a host and not a reviewer and still be within this world. And so often, like a great example was like my little bit part in Mass Effect 3, which was such a double-edged sword for me in a lot of ways, because I'm a huge fan of the game. I am a huge fan of BioWare. I'm totally fangirl, no apologies made, and I was really excited when they asked me to have that little role. And it was such a minor thing in my mind. I thought, well, stoked, but a minor part. It never really affected your gameplay. Right. And yet, wow, did I get just raked over the coals for that one, because they said, oh, well, BioWare's paying IGN to have her in here, or how long has this been going on? IGN didn't have any idea that this was even happening. Right. They contacted me, not IGN,
But there's that general sense, that there's corruption. And even I remember years ago, like Peter Molyneux made me a little villager in black and white, and he just said Jeff Keighley, and you could throw him around. It was, didn't even know about it, he just did it. And then people say like, hey, how did this happen? And it's like, yeah, it's, again, there's things like that, and I get approached with that kind of stuff too, and it's like it's that fine line, because it's like that would be a really cool and fun thing to do.
If I gave review scores, or if I affected the results of how a game was perceived on our site, in a numbers value, I would understand. If I was writing articles and making official IGN article judgments on a title, I would completely agree. Right. But I'm not, and I never have in 7 years of that site. That being said, I get the perception of the public as to why this is a danger zone, but I can honestly say, like IGN, G4, here, people that I know, I can't think of anybody that I've ever run into that is a reviewer that has sold out that way. Right. I'm not saying they're not out there. Maybe they are.
You see, I remember there was something where I remember it was like,
of it.
EGM gave like the Aliens game a 9, and everyone else gave it a 6 or something like that. And people were like, what's going on there? But it's generally, it's like,
maybe that guy got lucky and had a great experience. Who knows?
It's someone's opinion. But you're right, but it's also just, when you look at the industry, there's so many different sources to get reviews. I don't know anyone that just reads one review and says, hey, this site said this game's a 9 out of 10, so I'm going to go and buy this game, and then they're going to play it, and they're going to say, this is terrible. Clearly they were bought off by the publisher. When you look at, you look at media reviews and things like that to figure out whether games are good.
I look at Metacritic first just to see the average, and then I have a handful of reviewers whose opinions I respect, the giant bomb guys I respect. I always read Jim Sterling's reviews on Destructoid just because he cracks me up. Right. But I seldom agree with his score, because he usually knocks 20 points off if something pisses him off, some small thing. But I read reviews more for content. And if a Metacritic score starts out at a 70, I'm not even going to bother with the game. Right. But if it's above 82.
That's an aggregated score amongst everyone. And
yeah,
I
and
guess
that's the point
least,
that the 9 balances out with a 6, and they kind of come out. But if you get a 90, that means people pretty much like the game.
Right.
I think if you remember back to the Jeff Gerstmann GameSpot, Kane and Lynch incident,
Oh, that's true, yeah.
that showed a lot of integrity, but it also showed, and again, I think Jeff's not permitted to talk about it, so I can only talk about what I've heard happen, that he was asked to compromise his review. Yeah, but not before the fact. It was after he wrote a bad review, I think he was asked to lighten it up a little bit, and he said no, and he ended up quitting. So we know at least one guy has huge integrity. And I would say that's pretty much true of everybody. I think where you get people being bought off is the subtle influences, like the junket. And again, I wasn't invited, nor will I be invited to the next one, but I remember when Grand Theft Auto Vice City came out, I think the junket was in South Beach. And I heard it was 3 days of freely flowing liquor and scantily clad attendants and gameplay. And the guys all came out of that saying, "What a great game!" Now, as it happens, it was a great game. So
suggestion of impropriety.
So should we diss Rockstar because they had a great game and they also wanted to have a fun time with the reviewers? I mean.
And the funny thing is, I think there's actually less and less of that going on now. You remember there used to be tons of these.
I was going to say, the gaming industry about what would you say, like 5 years ago went through what I like to call the Hollywood phase, where they would have like red carpet launches. Everybody was thinking they were putting themselves on par with like movie openings. There was like, I think I went to Paris twice one month to cover some sort of game. I mean, it was just like ridiculous stuff, and it's just one of those things where I think everybody got a little big for their britches, like across the board, media too. Like everybody got kind of wrapped into this, like, we're important now. We're like Hollywood. This stuff's happening. We're traveling, and it's amazing. And it's just, it was that phase. It was that time, and it's gone now. I think part of it, I think it's a combination of just the times change as the times change, but also I think the bubbles burst on the housing market. Economy took a huge tank. And nobody was willing to spend that kind of money to ship a bunch of reviewers out to Shangri-La.
I think there's also been a huge response to, I think we have to consider YouTubers, the media now. And I think there's been a big response to that. Just a person with a webcam, just saying his or her own opinion. And
well, that's naturally just trusted more because it feels like it's one guy.
That's Hip Hop Gamer.
Yeah, exactly.
He's real.
He's real. Joe or Hip Hop Gamer, all these people who are sort of, they are the gamer. And it's sort of like they're not an established organization, whether it's Viacom or IGN or whoever. Who, as you said, like those people are sort of seen as the real voices, pure voices.
Right.
But you're still somewhat pure, boss.
I'm still somewhat
slowly corrupting.
You guys are slowly corrupting. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, I think people are surprised about how much how much free will we do have. We are owned by Viacom, but we're allowed to do what we want.
But nobody tells you what should be on Final Boss or anything like that.
Exactly.
Or just like
It's I have just as much autonomy as Hip Hop Gamer.
Right.
You got to keep an eye out on the YouTube stuff though as well. I mean, you can't completely trust it 110%. I think it's a great step in the right direction, but a lot of time those people are also trying to be as cantankerous as possible and as explosive in their speech as possible because that's what gets them views and they want to have the most. I mean, it's the same thing. And then what gets them, the more views they get, the more ads get placed on their YouTube channel. And then those ads get that person more money. I mean, it's not really terribly different.
No, because IGN or we have an established base of people that we know they're going to watch these videos. Whereas, if Michael Pachter was starting his own YouTube channel, he might be even more controversial.
Count on it.
All right, guys, hold that thought. We're going to be right back here in the bonus round.